I've always felt that the most important currency is my time on this earth, right? That's the real money. And it's about how you spend it and change it into this other money that allows you to meet your responsibilities. You have to do that, and then allows you to live your life the way you want to be or some variation of that.
Whatever sort of lifestyle a person wants to live, probably you should go about conduct yourself in a way that would lead to the resources to live your optimal life, you know? Today I get to chat with Herb Dean. And Herb Dean is the most respected referee in martial arts for sure. And I would argue perhaps the most respected referee in any sport that, very well known. On the internet, they said you've done over 3,500 fights now. It's probably more than that.
Yeah, I stopped counting, but I've done a lot of fights. When I first started doing this thing, California, we would have, fights Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I traveled a lot doing it, and I liked doing it. Tried to do as much of it as I could, and it's not like when you work at the UFC, you're one referee who may do 3 matches that night. I'm the one referee. It's not unheard of for me to do 20 matches that day, so it stacked up pretty fast.
How did your career veer into that? I know you had a pretty good martial arts background yourself. You won a couple professional fights, and what was your original interest in martial arts, and how did that lead you into your career path?
Well, I always liked martial arts. I mean, I was a kid, I liked, comic books and Bruce Lee movies, and also, I wasn't, I did do some team sports, but when it came time to finding something to work out, I figured it should be useful. Protecting yourself is important. And so, I decided I was always drawn to martial arts. I did karate and boxed, and one of my friends in high school, he was a kickboxer. I thought I knew what kickboxing was because I boxed and I did karate, but I went to one of his matches. He was having Muay Thai matches with, grown men from Thailand and stuff like that, and I was really impressed, and so I started training at the school he went to. And, one thing led to another. I trained, had some matches. One of the other guys who was there fighting, he was in the first UFC, and so that's kind of what got my interest in MMA. So we, started trying to learn as much as we could about mixed martial arts. It wasn't mixed martial arts then. I think they called it UFC or called it No Holds Barred or whatever. It had different names, but trying to learn more than one martial art,
I had a chat with Royce Gracie recently. He came over and we spent a few hours together, and he's just amazing storyteller and has an amazing family story and personal story. And so, as you know, he won those first 2 tournaments, I think in 1993, 1994. And that was really a different world of like what UFC turned into today. Right. Versus the original renditions of that of multi fights in a night, and that was an awful tough thing to win.
Yeah, man. I saw that. I was looking on your Instagram and I saw that you had Royce Gracie on, and I want to watch that the whole episode because he's somebody when he speaks, you can learn a lot just by watching him, by listening to him. Something I learned just I did the. When at one time they had some Tops to make some cards for us, and they wanted so many. They gave us a contract, and we're supposed to sign so many of them, and they pay us a little bit of money to do it. And when I got there and I was going through each of them, and I forgot how long it took me to get them done. Probably less than an hour. And then the guy who did mine said, "Oh yeah, when I took these over to Royce, I think Royce took about 4 hours, and it was just a real big, dash of cold water for me to learn that, hey, Royce Gracie took hours in his time with his signature for each of these cards where I kind of rushed through them, and it was definitely a learning, experience right there. Like, hey, just about taking your time and giving something the effort it deserves.
A thought that I had from after chatting with him or during chatting with him is that his take or his family take. He speaks about his father a lot, and kind of his family take about integrity or character. And I think you're touching on that topic. That they're very systems focused, very regimented, systematic people.
Exactly, and taking pride in anything that you're going to do, you need to take pride in it. If you're going to do it that way.
And a comment that stuck with me you'll see it in the interview, and I don't mean to shift this interview that way too much, but I think it's really consistent with the conversation we're likely to have today. That a comment that stuck with me is Weiss said that if you give somebody a black belt, like he wants to know them at least 10 years. So even if their skill set is extremely good, and anybody else likely would have given them a black belt already, he says he really needs to know about their character. That he wants to know that they're not doing other things in the background that would that he wouldn't feel proud to have his name and his family name associated with that person, for them to go around the world and say that they have that black belt from him. So he said if somebody's an alcoholic, or if they have other problems in their life, they might be extremely talented at jiu-jitsu, and they might have got a black belt somewhere else, but he doesn't want his name associated with somebody if they're not living their life in with a high standard of integrity and whatnot. So high character is the way he would say it. So that stuck with me a lot. That the way he said that, I see that he meant it. And and those are sometimes tough decisions. All the things that go on in the back. You've been around fighters your whole life, and you've been one. And something that stands out to me about you, and something I was very interested to talk to you about, is like, you got to make some really tough decisions sometimes. And I was at the fights yesterday. I was in the front row, and I watch you in there. That I think it was the Roundtree fight, but at the end of this fight, you're dancing around, and I'd say this extremely respectfully. That I say you don't want to stop it 2 seconds too soon. You don't want to stop it 2 seconds too late. But if you rewatch the tape, I don't mean to laugh about it, but I see in the professionalism where you're leaping over here and you're leaping over here, and you have some very excited footwork.
Yeah, no, you can laugh. Yeah. Well, because all that jumping around is that I have to make an intervention, right? And that intervention is a very important one, because each fight in our sport is none like any other sport. Each fight is the most important match they're having in their life at that time, no matter where it is in their career, And so when I teach my referee course, I started off with a picture of Mac Danzig, and he's covered in blood, and we're in a parking lot of an Indian reservation. And he's getting a local belt, the Gladiator Challenge belt, put around his neck, around his waist, and he's ecstatic. He's got the biggest smile on his face. And that match led to other matches, and it led to, a bunch of, success. But each one's the most important one. And bottom line is they make a lot of sacrifices, And so I have to balance the integrity of their career with the integrity of their body. You know what I mean? And so I want to try to get it right. And one of the things with all the dancing is I have to be in a position where I can get good information, because if I make the decision from a certain angle, I'm not going to have good information, and I might, it's a tough thing in the sport. Like when you pull someone off of someone who you care about, and they're looking up at you awake, they're looking at you like, hey, you've done them a disservice. So, yeah, it's each moment is a tough call.
Yeah, and to clarify to anybody who maybe doesn't understand, like when I say dancing around, I don't say it with any tiny bit of disrespect. Is like is the way that I took that is there's such a level of care or professionalism that you want to make sure that you make the best possible call you could, at precisely the best time. That was my perception of it.
Well, no, and even if it was with some jokes, I think it can be joked about it. I mean, we can have fun and jokes, but at the end of the day, I need to be in a position to get good information, and also in a position to make a good intervention, so.
And that somebody's financial future on the line, somebody's health is on the line.
Yeah, we're
and
bound,
it really is an important thing that you do that is very important to make the right call consistently.
Right. And so, and I try to, you always try to, if you have some, ones that are challenging or maybe not the best result, always, reviewing everything I do and trying to figure out where, there's a lot of people we work with, trying to figure out how, trying to figure out where it's my fault so that I can always make it better, So.
What are some of the systems you have in place, or like, check marks in your own head? I don't know what I'm just anticipating. Maybe there's some, a checklist that, did I do this, or what is your system?
Yeah,
for
there's a lot
at
of
that?
checklists. And, there's a lot of but one thing is my position checklist. So what it comes from, it's not as simple as that, because our sport is so dynamic and so many so many different, it's three-dimensional, so there's so many different ways someone can win, so many different things that can happen. And so what you're doing is you're running that through your mind at all times and then choosing the best position to be so you can get the best information, for one. And then you're going through all the different things that you've experienced, and okay, well, could happen in this position. If he's near here, this is where he likely is going to be. If this is going on, this is going to be his escape route, so I better not stand there, things like that.
That simple?
Yeah.
No, I know, I know in my life when I have to make decisions in a stock market, say, and it's a very fluid environment that I might do a lot of things right with the information that I have, but you can't possibly know. I can't know what 8,000 companies are going to do on any particular day. I can't know what in the more important part that moves the market. I can't know what the public perception is going to be of those 8,000 companies. That it's not going to quite reflect reality. It's going to be their perception of reality about those different stocks at different times. So, for me, that means I focus in on, I don't try to understand 8,000 things. I try to understand, what are a couple sectors that I'm, interested enough in that I could learn more about that throughout my lifetime without being bored to death and hating my life. But, be knowledgeable enough about a couple sectors that I'll make a lot of money over time. So I'm always thinking long term, but when somebody asks me to talk about an investment philosophy, that's a culmination. Or Derek, why did you make this investment? Or why did this one work out well? And you made you bought that and it went well, and this other one was it's up 20% instead of 1,800%. And I'm like, man, there's a million little decisions. There's all the life experiences, and there's a million little tidbits that go into making one of those decisions. And I suspect your brain is working the same way in a different area.
Yeah, that was a very good way of explaining what I was trying to explain. Yeah, you definitely get that. It almost comes to, when you try to explain it to someone, they might think, oh, it was instinct or intuition. But at the same time as when your brain's going through it almost comes out as instinct and intuition, but it comes from your experiences,
So you only had to have a few million micro decisions to then make a succinct statement like you did later in life of like, make sure I'm in the right position. And
yeah, exactly.
Well, that's why you make it look easy.
Yeah, well, I think also a life choice. I've spent a lot of time doing martial arts, and I'm one of those people. One of the things, I'm one of those people who likes to be involved. So if there's something I like, how some people, there's definitely things I'm not involved in that I enjoy, but I like to have something where, kind of how I define myself is, as a contributor. You know what I mean? I'm definitely more defined by what I'm into than by what I'm consumed, and so, I spend a lot of hours doing martial arts.
So it helps you have some understanding between having that practice in your own life, plus countless hours in the ring, plus I imagine reviewing tapes in the aftermath as well.
Yeah.
So you have a pretty damn good intuition of how somebody's going to move, how people are going to move under certain circumstances, and so where to place yourself to have the best perspective without being an obstruction or whatnot.
Right, yeah, and as far as for, what I'm looking for and seeing where things are going to be going. And, also we do a lot of training as far as for officials. So, they have a lot of training that we go through, and we interact with our group. And I have a group where, I bounce things off, and a lot of other officials that I respect, and we call each other and talk about these things. And also, I teach my course, and my course makes me better. You know what I mean? Especially, I have, people who take my course, and then they come and try to make sure they hold me to that standard also. So,
What are some of the key lessons you learned through your career that you try to impart on others that are, come to you for training and teaching about, how to be a high quality, official?
Well, I think the one is the attitude. I think, this is I try to come from an attitude of service. I'm in charge, and I'm in there, and I'm making decisions for people. But what I'm doing is I'm a servant, trying to give them a consistent, reliable environment so that they can shine, so they can, showcase. And so that's the first thing I try to impart to people, is that that's what it's about, an attitude of service. I think that that what we talked about before, the gravity of the situations we make. So it's those duties to me are sacred. And then also I try to give people a list of what our actual duties are and what our focus in are, our duties to make sure that no one receives any unnecessary injuries. So we're, making our choices like sometimes we have to, at some point, the most difficult ones are when you're like almost have to, figure out, hey, I make this choice now because I'm not letting someone stand there and take damage just because. I'm letting them do it because there's a chance to win. So those are the things. And then also having a list and having a checklist, and that's a lot to go into, like right here. But yeah, we have about 3 days of checklist when someone comes and takes the course. Yeah.
What are the top few bullet points in there that you'd walk somebody through, or that you think of yourself when you're preparing yourself for an event?
Well, I won't go into it, but I mean, because I don't want to talk that much about that stuff. But if somebody, just reviewing things like even the way someone falls, you know what I mean? That's a lot of information there, and and it's numbered and whatnot. So we go through things like that. There's making sure that you have clear signals because so the athletes know what's going on, but also from our body language and the things that we're doing and how we give our signals, it makes it so the crowd understands what's going on. Even so something so simple as ending a fight, making sure you wave it off with a large motion lets people know, do they need to know, hey, what's going on? Or do they need to know, hey, it's time to celebrate, so.
If I focus on the one tidbit about, high-level bullet points of how somebody's falling, the way that I would interpret that is, are they in a controlled posture where they're, trying to keep their balance or scramble for position versus somebody that, might be a good time to call off the fight.
Yeah,
they don't have good control of themselves.
Backwards, yeah, imploding, yeah. So, yeah, basically, it's pretty straightforward.
Gotcha. Well, tell me about young Herb. What was Herb up to as a young man and on your journey to your current place in life?
Well, I mean, like any other person, I had a lot of interest, I like to, I kind of was a nerd, like you said, a nerd. I like to read a lot, and I also liked being active and doing things. And, that was young me. I grew up in Pasadena, California. And, luckily I found martial arts. And it was a passion for me, something I did starting off as a teen. And, when mixed martial arts came out, there was a scene in California, and I got to be a part of that. So I met my coach. My coach was a referee, so that's how I started refereeing. Yeah, but I also like, have other interests. I like playing music. I like just being a part of things. Like when I was young, I used to like to think I was a rapper. But I had some neighbors who were concert promoters, so I got to always travel around and go experience a lot of great reggae music, things like that. Yeah. So that's me growing up.
I had a conversation with Apollo Ono. Apollo is an ice skater, speed skater.
Okay.
And he won 8 Olympic medals. He's the most decorated Winter Olympian from the United States. And he's telling me, how his evolution of, seeing more details, finer details, and being more precise over the time, that, that by his last medals, which is, I'm not sure if he was in 3 or 4 Olympics, but by his last Olympics where he's winning medals, he said he really had to change his style dramatically, had to have, a lot more precise coaching, and to the level that it's kind of ingrained in his communication that he speaks in terms of like millimeters, that he wants to be within a millimeter or two of where his coaches would tell him to be, on the track at a certain point, in the event. Or he talked about his dietary habits, that he had to lose a lot of weight to really lean up, to change his body type to be more aerodynamic, to be competitive, in his later in his last Olympics. Now he was successful and he got some medals there, but the discipline involved in that, he said that for I believe 10 months, he said he didn't have 1 almond more or 1 almond less than his coaches told him to eat. That is just extreme precision and focus on those little details. And I know that I see the way you make decisions, and I know humans well enough that you have layers and layers of that in your mind, and I'm fascinated to just learn a bit more about that, of
Okay.
like
Yeah,
how
I'll
you
get
think
into
about
it.
that in detail.
No, I'll start talking about it a little bit more detail. Yeah. So as far as for deal, one thing that we have that is we actually have started using replay, and so we some of us get to do the replay position more than others, and it's also when you're doing replay, you're watching each other work, and you're putting yourself in each other's shoes and walking through the different choices that people are making, and so something things we have to make decisions on, like a fence grab. You know, our sport is we have our interventions, right? So we can do a soft warning, hey, watch that. We can do a hard warning, stop time out, which is a big deal because momentum is such a huge thing in our sport, and the time to choose to give momentum or take away momentum when you do a hard warning, or something like, or even as taking a position away from someone. That's one of the things that we have where interventions we can use to keep the thing going along and keep the rules being followed. But one point, you're a math guy, so you probably can guess what's the most common score of fights that go the distance. In our sport, it's 29-28. So that means it's 1 point difference. So that means if referee, someone just says take a point, it sounds like something so insignificant. But 1 point takes away a win in the majority of matches that go the distance. And so we have to, my job is to intervene as little as possible. I do not want the match, the flavor of the match or the perception of the match that my interventions are what's decided the match. But of course, at times we do have to intervene. So we have to agonize over these different positions and these micro details so that, and we do it before we get in there, because the time to do these things is not when, to make these decisions is not on the fly. You're going to be watching other people make them. You're going to be imagining them. You're going to be practicing making them. You're going to be getting your flow together beforehand. So if you're looking at a fence grab, did the fence grab prevent a position? Did the fence grab alter the fight in a way that it wouldn't have gone? Or was it more of a post? Whereas a post is legal. So we're looking for, did the fence go this way or did it go that way? Was the person able to maintain position by grabbing a fence? Are we going to take a point from someone for grabbing a fence, which we know 1 point can alter the outcome of the fight? Is it a harmful foul or is it not a harmful foul? You know, and so was there contribution to the foul? So those are the type of things we're looking for. You know, if someone, some of the other harmful fouls, did the other person contribute to it? Did they not contribute? Was it incidental? Was it a way? Because that's the other thing is that, you know, we have a switch in our files where we have an intentional foul or an unintentional foul, and we have a whole little, you know, chart that we go off on that. If an intentional foul comes at the 3rd round of a 2-round fight or the 4th or 5th of a 5-round fight, you know, and it's intentional foul that does damage, then there's some, you know, referee must do this. Or if the fighter can or can't continue, the referee must disqualify. And what the hardest thing about it makes it sound pretty easy, intentional or unintentional, but what we're asking the referee to do is read somebody's mind. You're going to try to put intent in someone's mind, and so you're going to have to look for a bunch of micro details to try to figure that out, you know.
I see, you know, a very frequent one that you have to make decisions about, or your profession has to make decisions about, or like eye pokes. That is every time you go to the fight, somebody's, you know, they're, you know, kind of putting out a feeler, and sometimes that gets somebody, or, you know, they throw a punch and their thumb's sticking out a little bit or whatnot.
Right.
And, you know, I'm impressed, and sometimes I'm oftentimes sitting in the front row and I'm pretty close to what's going on, you know, and obviously, you know, you and your cohort are closer, your colleagues are closer, but I'm impressed sometimes that, like, the referee sees something that, I didn't see even up close, and even a fighter might not be complaining about it at the moment, but, you have to make a decision about that. Did it happen? Is it impairing them? Or I'm interjecting my perceptions, and I'm clearly not the professional you are in your space, but those are tough decisions to make. Is somebody acting and being a little too dramatic? Is somebody, have an impairment that maybe they're not crying about, but, it does affect their performance through the rest of the day? And it looks very complicated to me that there's some tough decisions that have to be made on occasion.
Yeah, and that is one. So oftentimes with fouls, of course they're going to happen. If I see that, if I'm going to take momentum from someone, even if so I might, taking momentum or stopping may hurt the fighter who's been fouled, and so someone might, you might see a foul, but the guy keeps on moving with the action that he's doing, and I don't want to take his momentum, and then it's a hard situation where, the fighter may have been fouled, and then, he didn't want to lose his momentum, but things didn't work out, and he may end up in a position he didn't want to end up in. He's going to say, hey, what about the foul? You know what I mean? So you got to look at it that way. But there's, that definitely is something that you kind of got it right there, that someone, you have to try to figure out how much it hurt somebody or how much it didn't, and what you can do to balance that out, especially if it's a harmful foul,
I see. When I think of as a civilian, when you get a little something in your eye, a little piece of dust or an eyelash or something falls in your eye, and that sucks, or you bump your eye somehow, or don't feel good. And I see these guys get, occasionally gets hit in the eye pretty hard, and again, it's your profession. Just me as an observer, I think to myself, man, it take you a few minutes to shake that off.
Yeah, well, you can see if somebody, and it's pretty evident. If somebody gets poked in the eye, there's a response that happens. Your eye starts to spasm. You can't help it. I think it's called a brephalospasm, and so your eye starts to spasm, and it's a reaction. It's a natural reaction, and sometimes it stops, sometimes it doesn't. But you can see it happening. You know it's happening, and you know why it's happening. So that does kind of help you to know how impactful, a foul like an eye poke might have been. If someone's having that type of spasm, that's when we're calling the timeout, and we're giving them time to work through that. And the physician's going to come in and check him. He's going to make sure that there's been no damage to the eye. And hopefully it stops before the 5 minutes is up. Because when we stop it for an injury, we have 5 minutes to examine the injury, to give the guy time to recover. If it takes longer than 5 minutes, the fight has to end, and we have to make a decision to determine the result of the bout. So hopefully, if you see a will to compete there, you want to hopefully get that fighter back in the game. And so some of the things that we've had from being overly structured is that we're not to assist in any way, but we have decided on calls with the ABC and with Nevada State Athletic Commission that for that particular eye poke, for that particular foul and eye poke, we can bring in a wet cloth and actually give it to the fighter because he has been fouled. So what's the use of not giving him any aid to try to get that to stop? And believe it or not, like a cold cloth and giving a little comfort relaxes that, and just that little bit of aid gets the fighter, hey, I'm ready to get back in there.
I imagine in my own mind when I watch this that if somebody delivered a firm groin kick to me or the eye poke, I might like to have about 4 minutes and 58 seconds of that 5 minutes. Yeah. And I see a lot of people they're 40 seconds or so, a minute. They're like, all right, back at it, and I'm like, all right, but.
Yeah, and that's funny that you mentioned that. So that's an interesting. So we have so the only one where the fighter can decide their time is with a groin kick. So if a fighter is kicked to the groin, he can decide, I want my 5 minutes. There's 5 minutes, and he can decide how much time he has up to the 5 minutes. And I always encourage guys to take their time, especially when you see they've been, they've got a pretty hard injury. Yeah, take your time. Yeah.
I had a chat with Junior Dos Santos a while ago, and I don't know who the referee of this fight was. And it's not a bad story about a referee, by the way. So, but he told me that he had a bout years ago with Miro Crow Cup, and he said that he felt like he was winning pretty solid. That he was doing very well, and said that in the mix of things, Miro kicked him extremely hard in the groin. He said it broke his cup. He said he still has the plastic cup that he kept it. He still has it years later. That he said it was cracked, and he said he fell to the ground. And Junior is he's 6'4", big, tough man.
But Crocock kicks hard. Yeah. That's the hardest, one of the hardest, a legendary hard kicker.
Yeah. So he says he's on the ground and holding himself and feeling quite a lot of pain. He says his coach yells out to him. He's like, champions don't feel pain. He's like, get up, champions don't feel pain. And he said he tried to take that instruction. He's like, well, champions don't feel pain. He's like, but I'm feeling a lot of pain right now.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I'm a champion, but I can't will it away. It's here.
He said in his internal self-talk that he's like, he tried to take that instruction, but it wasn't quite working out for him. And he said that his next instruction from his corner, so the coach yells out, he's like, look at him. He did that intentionally. Look at him. He says he looks over and says Crocop's on the other side of the cage with his arms on the fence and trying to catch his breath. And Junior, whether it's true or not, Junior had the perception at the time that that he was winning and he had momentum, and that the man did that intentionally to give himself a break. And he said that was the thing that psychologically helped him get himself back together, and he wanted to get back and engage again. So he says he won the fight. I haven't watched this fight, by the way, so I'm just relaying a story as it was conveyed to me. But he says he wins the fight. But he said in the aftermath that he went back to the locker room and he couldn't sit down. That he's really in quite a lot of pain later. That it bothered him for some time. But I just thought it was a painful but humorous story of the part that stuck with me is that champions don't feel pain, and he's like, I'm feeling some right now. But that's got to happen
but to
occasionally.
have the focus.
And again, you talked about this about reading minds, that there's there must be some tough, difficult decisions in there that you have to interpret other people's psychologies or intentions.
Just kind of read out the situation, like, hey, whether you did it on purpose or not, if this guy if the foul party did not contribute at all, the guy who got the foul did not contribute to the foul, I mean, so that goes into our decision on whether we're going to, take some points or things like that, or, we can disqualify people also, so that all goes into that. But man, what you're saying though is that, these guys, it's amazing what these guys can do and what they can go through and what they can take, and also what they're able to heal up from and get back in there and do it again, even just the training sessions, So, a lot of respect for what these athletes do. Best sport on earth.
It's the only sport I have any interest in. That I was a mediocre basketball player when I was young. Like I could have been on the high school basketball team. I played with all the high school basketball kids, and I was better than a lot of them. But I was a little hard-headed, and I didn't want to be on the team or something at the time. But I had no other real talent in the sport, and I've been training martial arts not for long. I started seriously in 2021, and Jake Shields is my main coach. He's helping me with MMA, and we learned a lot of jiu-jitsu from him. Paulie Malignaggi, he's a multi-time world champion boxer that he comes and trains with me frequently. Every month he'll come spend like 3 days with me, and Jake will spend 3 days with me. And
do you come out to Jake? Is Jake still in San Francisco?
Jake's living in Las Vegas.
Okay.
And then he comes to Chicago. That I built a gym for myself that has a chubby business guy in my 40s, and I needed to be less chubby. So I wasn't always as lean and slender as I am right now.
Okay, all right.
So I spent a couple $1 million on facilities and of my own. That I have a great weight training facility, boxing room, wrestling room, etc. So in a nice guest room that's comfortable for the guys to stay there. So I've had a lot of the former champions that spent time with me and made the trip to come for a few days.
That's really cool, man. That's great. I really like Jake a lot. Jake, I remember from because because Jake's from California, and so we in the lower in some of the more regional shows we ran into each other a lot. As a matter of fact, I used to train and had training partners. When I remember he beat some of my training partners in the early days. Yep. And I remember I think he kind of went through a few of our guys, and he went through like, I think 2 or 3 of our guys. He started with the youngest ones and then went up. And then I remember, I think he ended up beating one of the coaches. I remember we were all teasing him, because Jake was pretty young at the time. I was like, man, how you get beat by this little kid? But then, of course, the little kid goes on to become, a world champion.
So 5 times.
Yeah.
3 times at Strikeforce, plus a couple other things.
Yeah. So he was, and he was a beast back then. He was always doing, fighting him was like, it's a lot to, I think it was a lot for guys to prepare for. They didn't realize, for one, he had a unique body type and also the type of pressure that he did and his ethic, was a lot to deal with. Yeah.
When we started training together, he taught me a guillotine choke the hard way. So he taught me a good front guillotine choke, and I was a little too hard-headed. I didn't want to tap, and I wanted to try to fight through that a little bit. So then my throat hurt every day for about 15 days, and then it only hurt sporadically for about 15 more days after that.
Right.
So
you cough up any blood?
That was a useful lesson. No, but it was a little hard to swallow. So that was good for my diet. They helped me ingest a few less calories that month. So that was good for my diet and a useful lesson in life. And then, when we started, I was about 80 pounds heavier than him. And, I was really, really proud of myself if I could last a minute or so without getting compromised in some way. So I'm starting to do a little bit better now, but I'm doing substantially better than I was. But yeah, I've learned tremendous things from him. And that's a guy who, he's 43 right now, and 5-time world champion in various endeavors, 3 times at Strikeforce. In his spare time, he's still, watching. If we hang around the house together, we talk all the time and hang around. And in his spare time, he'll be watching jiu-jitsu training videos. He's still watching other people's matches, and it's just his hobby. It's just like this lifelong hobby that he's still very immersed in that, and extremely well respected by the most respected people in the world in that area. So he's real serious about his jiu-jitsu.
Well, no, he's an instructor. Jake's great. And I think with this sport, that's one of the cool things about it is that, there's always something to learn. There's so much, and no matter what, that's one of the things you always have to do is stay up with everything people are doing. And thing about it is the sport keeps growing faster and faster, whether it's with jiu-jitsu or whether it's with MMA. And that's cool that you started training. You said you started training in your 40s? Yeah, that's awesome, because it's never too late, you know what I mean? And
I was around, a lot of violent situations as a kid, but I was never, a trained fighter. I never went to a boxing gym or, karate, or there's no MMA gyms when I was a kid. But, I never did I was interested in those things my whole life, and my mother didn't want me to do that. My mother was, she thought I was going to get myself in more trouble, and and I know the truth is probably the exact opposite. But
I think so. I think that the bottom line is, first of all, I think that, fighting is a pure sport because it's what all other sports are. Other sports are basically ritualized combat to see who can use their mind and body to overcome others without getting hurt, and so we're going to hit this ball back and forth, or we're going to do these other things. But at the end, it comes down to a fight. No matter what the sport is, when you win, you say, I kicked your ass, right? So there's that to it. And, so also that, it's an important thing, I don't try to, but, safety is a serious need, and that people are going to try to work that out one way or the other. And if, especially with young men, if they're not given a structured way to get that worked out, they're going to find another way, And so I think, you're right. People end up with more trouble. People end up doing better in their other things, because once they have that worked out, they can figure out some of these other things like studying and things like that, So
I did it the other way. I had those type of confrontations as a teenager. I had too many confrontations, and I was a fat kid with a fat mom, and my dad was front page of the newspaper for numerous times through my childhood. So for criminal behavior, that he went to prison for drug trafficking when I was a child. So when you go to kid and you're 7 years old and you're a fat kid and your fat mom and your dad's at the newspaper for unpleasant things, the other kids don't talk too nice to you. They don't say a lot of supportive, nice words to you.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of conflicts like that, at school and outside of school, and my mother wasn't the kindest person inside the house either. So, there was always a thing in my head that, no, I was a bigger guy, and I felt very comfortable, as an adult. I think I avoided a lot of violent situations as an adult because I was comfortable enough that I wasn't scared to get hit. I wasn't trying to be a tough guy or a bully to nobody, through, my late teens, 20s, 30s, it was never a goal of mine to try to be a tough guy. I grew up with some tough guys, and I never seen these guys have great outcomes in life, So the tough guys that I grew up with, 3 of them are dead, and one of them's doing 30 years, one of them is doing life, and I seen enough of that type of behavior that I'm like, that don't pay, So, I was a nerdy guy. I like to read and watch documentaries, and even if I got in trouble at school or something, I'd be at home suspended from school, but watching a documentary in the afternoon, reading a book or something. So.
Yeah, that's the kind of kid I was too. I like to read. From grade school when I learned how to read, I was always reading books and liked information. I mean, kid like doing my schoolwork, I get I look up back in those days we used reference books like dictionaries and encyclopedias, and we had encyclopedias in our house, and I'd be working on my project and then pull out one of those books and then realize I've gone through pages and pages, just because that's how you are as a kid. Some kids like to soak up information.
As an adult, I was interested in MMA. I worked on business stuff forever, and that was really my obsession. I didn't like being poor, and I felt bad about myself that way as a kid. That it's American poverty, it's not third world poverty. But I felt bad as a kid that we have some welfare or turkey delivered from like a charity turkey for Thanksgiving or things like that. That really bothered me, and I wanted to make sure I didn't spend my adult life that way. So I worked on business, and I wanted to do well, and I wanted to have a lot of money. I wanted to be a wealthy person, and I didn't need to be a billionaire or the richest guy in the world or something, but I wanted to have enough money. I think everybody should do this, by the way. It might be a different number for me versus somebody else. But what the hell does it say about a guy that, you don't have enough money to live your life the way you want to?
Right.
That could be a very different number for a lot of different people, but whatever sort of lifestyle a person wants to live, probably you should go about conduct yourself in a way that would lead to the resources to live your optimal life,
Right.
And, for me, that was probably a big insecurity of mine that, I wanted to prove something to myself in that area, and I did pretty well for myself. And, in recent years, I did extremely well for myself, better than I ever thought I could,
Right.
So then I woke up, in my early 40s, and I thought, you got more money than you ever thought you'd have. You made that for yourself in a way that, I feel internally proud of, or not in a really cocky or arrogant, certainly not in an arrogant way, but I'm like, there's a confidence that comes with you. If you have a competency in a certain area, there's a confidence that comes with that, and you know that because you're that type of man yourself. So, and I thought, more money is not the next thing for me. It's like, I'm going to go get more money. It's on autopilot. I'm going to go my money makes me money.
Right.
My money makes me money. And then I get additional money in my business that, like, I don't have to work with anybody that I don't want to in my business. That they have to fill out an application. They have to request an interview. If we don't like anything we hear in that interview, they don't get to talk to me ever. So I don't have to spend time. I intentionally don't spend time with anyone that I don't think would be a good personality fit and somebody that I'd be happy to know, face to face. So, that led to me thinking like, well, probably the best thing you could be doing with your time then is, you got to get your body weight down a bit. I was so focused on business opportunities and, whether entrepreneurial things or stock market that, I didn't eat right. A lot of money that I made in business, I was traveling around the world, so you're changing time zones, 120, 130 flights a year. So you've traveled enough that you know what that does to your body. If you're
I've done it, yeah.
Changing continents frequently, and I'd spend about 5.5 months international for about 7 years in a row. So, and I could still do better. What I did do well is I was good at lifting weights during that time. I was hitting weights heavy. I felt good about that. And in some ways, I use that as an excuse to eat too much. So I think, hey, man, you just worked 14 hours today. you didn't eat earlier, so now I have these, 1,800 calories right before bed,
Right.
or different things like that. So I had to sort that out. I had to be a little more responsible with my diet. And the last straw that really pissed me off is, in 2020 when, for various reasons, people saw fit to close businesses and close the gyms. So I lived in a building that had a great gym. For about 7 years at that time, I'd been lifting weights 4 days a week, like a religion. If I had a headache, I was going to the gym. If I had a fever, I was going to the gym. Whatever, there's no excuse. I was going to the gym. I might have a 70% workout that day, but if it was a gym day, I was going to the gym. If I wasn't dead, I was going to go make an effort. And then that got taken away from me. And then so that's where my diet spiraled. Is if I was hitting weights, then it's a little appetite suppressant for me too, or I feel like, you're not going to mess up the progress you're making. But when I didn't do that, then I was getting weaker and eating too much. So anyway.
No, I know all about it, man. Well, I'm not going to say it's a struggle for all of us, but yeah, it's always a struggle for me. Like, trying to balance everything, and sometimes you're more motivated, sometimes you're not. Like what you said about money was also interesting too, about what that number is for some people, and it's different for different people, and I don't know. For me, I think I'm, and my flow and my philosophy over how I deal with that has kind of changed at different times. But I think I've always, for me, I've always felt that the most important currency is my time on this earth, right? That's the real money. That's the real money, and it's about how you spend it and change it into this other money that allows you to meet your responsibilities. You have to do that, and then allows you to live your life the way you want to be, or some variation of that. Luckily for me, my personality type is that I have more than one bottom line. You know what I mean? With that said, with the time on this earth, my bottom line for me is a real bottom line is how much fun I'm having while I'm doing what I'm doing. Because I've only got so much time on this earth, I want to spend it doing things I like. What do I feel about it? How does it make me feel? Do I feel good about what I do? And that covers a lot of things. So with those bottom lines in mind, that's like I think I've had an amazing outcome to be able to do a job in my sport that I love and that I'm passionate about, that allows me to, it's something I'm going to do every day. I'm going to, 2006, I started traveling with this sport, and it grew more and more and more. And then, I've had some years where, like, say 2008, I had a thing where besides, refereeing this, I have other UFC, I do other projects. Like, I worked with some people starting, other circuits and different things like that. So there'll be times where I'm traveling nonstop and then flying from here to come back to a UFC. But it's been a blessing for me because that's something I wanted to do. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to see this country. I like seeing just California, and or if I was anywhere throughout any of the other parts of this country, it was that was something I always liked doing, and I enjoyed it. And then when I got to work with a lot of international companies besides the UFC, so there's times where you see me. If you go back, those times where I'm not involved with the UFC as much. Because I was involved with some of my other projects as well. So I got to, work with a company in Romania. I got to work with a company in Korea. I got to work with a company in China. And I spent a lot of time over there. I got to work with a Russian company that, for a few years that, and with all those involved, many times would leave going that way and come back, this way.
Around the world.
Oh, yeah, over and over again. So that does take a toll on your body. And that's the discipline, is trying to figure that out, and that, it's different as it goes on. Before, just making sure that I had a pair of running shoes wherever I went. That did kind of help me out. And, it also helped me see things, like when I would go to a city, end up in a city that I traveled to, and, I put on the shoes and go out and run 10 miles and get lost, and then try to find my way home and see the sights on the way. It's a good way to see the sights. But
it's fun to go to a new city and kind of wander around and get lost a bit and find your way back. I've done that numerous times in my life, and I know the joy of that.
Yeah.
I'm curious your perspective. Sometimes young people ask me about, work-life balance. And sometimes people our age, in the 40s or 50s, ask me about work-life balance. And I generally laugh at them that I think you might have a different perspective. I don't know. I'm sincerely curious that I think, that's great if you're in your 40s and 50s and if you did things in your 20s and 30s that would give you the intellectual resources and social resources, which in my opinion would lead to the financial resources to live your life the way you want to. That sounds like a good plan. Let's have more balance in our. I'm going to have more balance in our 40s. But I was just very obsessive for a quarter century in my life. I was very narrow focused, very obsessive. For the first part of that, I had a lot of negative self-talk about it. That I wanted to get the damn results, and I didn't care how I felt. I didn't care if I slept 80 minutes last night. I just wanted to get the damn results. Right now, I'm in a transition that it feels weird to me, and even when I speak about it, it's the only thing that I can talk about that feels inconsistent in my brain. That it throws me out of my normal thinking patterns because it's it's a weird transition for me to go from obsessing about financial type things to obsessing more about at this point it makes more sense for me to eat a little better and train a little harder and develop martial arts skill sets and have more balance in my life. But I didn't feel that way at all through my 20s or 30s.
But it's natural to feel that way, because for what I say, I believe that our time on this earth is the only true money. So it's just important as financial, and it can be more important than financial. So there's that, and then also, I think we get to points where I think somebody told me that when you get around to your late 30s and 40s, that's when everything becomes a lot easier. I think that, and I try to see that for me. The times where it's like when you're riding a bike and you're riding a 10-speed and you have it in that first gear. And you're pedaling and pedaling, that's what you're doing when you're younger. When you get to a certain age, you've done a lot of things, you've kind of figured things out. You're like, no, I'm not gonna spend time here, I'm not gonna spend time, and so that each time you pedal, it's on that top speed. So of course you're able to get things done a little bit more and be able to focus on work-life balance. For me, luckily for me, is that most of the time, even at the other jobs I've had jobs working with, teaching martial arts. I've had jobs with working with youth, and I combine those things. So I've always had things that I liked, that I try to spend time doing things that I like doing. So, but I think in younger, I didn't have much of balance or be able to think about having work-life balance. I was just constantly going to the wall, I think a little bit later, take some time out. But still, for me, I think when you're doing your own thing, I think you always have to keep it going or else it kind of starts to peter out, right?
Yeah, I'm not the type of person that wants to relax or retire. Like I want to work on different projects, but I find that I'm happiest inside if I want to learn new things every day, man. Like I haven't felt this way for a long time, but I know I would feel embarrassed or I'd feel disappointed with myself if at the end of the day I couldn't answer, that if it wasn't clear to me that I learned a couple new things today, and you go to sleep and you dream about that a little bit and you wake up and do it a little bit better and the next iteration and the next iteration, and I get excited about that. I'm kind of addicted to learning and doing stuff, and if I had to sit around for a couple of days, I get a little stir crazy. I'm not. My brain's not made to sit around. No, there's some people out there that say that that's an indicator that I'm supposed to sit around or go meditate for 10 days or some shit, and that sounds like hell to me. I just want to go get things. Like you go meditate for a month. Yeah. Imagine what I'm going to produce in the next month that I'm not going to have. And now that said, I do feel like my brain is pretty calm all the time. Like I don't feel anxious. I don't feel I'm not a depressed person. I'm not an anxious person. When something don't go my way, I get angry. That's my default emotion, and then I try to fix it and get it the way I want it. And sometimes the world changed in a way that you can't fix it, so you have to accept that. And I've trained my brain that I'm like, well, the sooner I can get from disappointment to acceptance, is there something I can do to fix it? Let me do that right now. And if I can't do something to fix it, then the sooner I can get to a place of acceptance psychologically, then the sooner I can get back to productivity on some other metric and keep things moving again. So I've kind of made my brain think like that over the years, and it's worked out well for me.
That's good to be. I think that's important, being able to figure out what you can fix and what you can't, and then also doing what you just said there, doing what you can right then, and then knowing what you're going to do about it later, and then putting it aside and not giving it space until it's time to do that later. I think that's something that, I'm still getting better at, like, hey, all right, I've done all I can on that, get it off the plate and put something else on that I can do something about, So.
If I worked on about 1.5 projects at a time, that was the right cadence for me through life, that you could develop a good level skill set, whatever, everybody has different goals. Some people don't have goals at all, literally, like some people never thought about their goals. And you know how their outcomes are going to be if they're that type of person, But for people that did have, goals of different types, it's like, it's not a goal of mine to be good at golf or tennis. I just couldn't care less, But I am interested in martial arts. I'm very good at business. I'm a legitimate, a very high-level expert in some areas of business. Not every area. Warren Buffett, at age 86, he says he thinks he understands about 2% to what there is to know about business. When he was 86, he's 91 right now. But when he was 86, he said he thinks he's learned about 2% of what there is to know on that topic. So, if Buffett, who has a similar IQ as I do, and he's 50 years older than me, if he only learned 2%, then I think it'd be a little arrogant for me to think that I know 2%.
Right.
If I'm lucky, I understand 1% relative to him.
Yeah.
So, if I could focus on like 1.5 projects, have a primary project and a secondary project, that was the right rhythm. That I could really obsess about one thing and build a skill set up. And then when you're exhausted and couldn't do that anymore, then I'd focus on a second thing and do a little bit, make a little progress there the same day. And after you build some skills, it's pretty easy to maintain them in the background. That you could have a maintenance mode that's a hell of a lot easier than learning something new. And then I could maintain that and go build something new and maintain that and build something new. And that was sort of the cadence of my life. And so now I just have to, make that shift from that always being a financially focused thing to being like, well, why don't you go work on your martial arts practice? Why don't you go work on, eat a little bit less tonight. Maybe you don't need that extra 200 calories before bed.
Right.
I lost 28 pounds, so, I never went on a diet. I was just shifting my lifestyle a bit over time.
Yeah.
So I got to lose another 20 pounds to be appropriate for my muscle mass, but it's coming together, and I'm feeling good about that direction.
I'm losing weight too. I'm going. I think when I was traveling so much, I kind of, changed my focus. Started, working out regularly, and I generally like to, as far as my food, I can eat healthy, but getting back on the mats again, because traveling, I didn't have consistent, on the mats, because I was doing, constantly every weekend I'm in another city. But with coming back and forth just to Apex, I'm able to have my time at home where I can get in with my guys in my gym. And so also making sure I'm working with, a fun thing we're doing right now at our gym is we're doing an over 40 jiu-jitsu club. So only guys who are over 40 get to roll with us now.
I can join the senior league.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm not that much older than the other guy. I mean, there's a couple of guys who are in the 50s like me, but it's just been fun. It's like, you won't have to go as extra hard, working on your game, working on, picking out what I'm working on there and getting my game back. It's a lot of fun, So I've never got tired of doing martial arts. There's always something to learn there. And, but like you're talking about also, learning projects, always trying to come up with new projects and finding new projects. So I got some pretty good ones right now, making my referee school run more efficient.
Tell us more about that. Who's the right client for you? Who's the person that comes to you that's their calling to learn more about that and maybe have that profession?
Well, there's somebody the thing about the sport is grown. So there's always, in our sport, when our sport first started, there wasn't a lot of regulation. So there's always room for regulation. People want to be involved. So there's different people. So people are going to be officials. There are people who have experience in martial arts. But then there's people who like the sport and maybe don't have as much experience, but they're structured. And so they can come and be event supervisors, inspectors, things like that. And so, and that's all on the regulation side of things. And then I have a project also where it kind of goes alongside with that, was helping people regulate better, because traveling throughout the world, you see different levels of regulation in different places you go, and having that, having been able to travel as much and have been involved with officiating for over 20 years, like I don't know, close to 25 years, I've been able to see some things, and so I can help people out with that process. So I have another company that's doing that. So.
Where does somebody look for information if somebody is interested in learning from you? Where would they go? Is there a website?
They go to
can look up?
herbdean.com, and there's way to contact me on there, and you can look around at my MMA referee course page and get a little bit of information about there. So, yeah, herbdean.com. You can follow me on Instagram, herbdeanmma, and I talk about it there too. Yeah, Instagram, Facebook.
I give you a lot of shout outs on Instagram. You've DM'd me a couple times before.
I give you a
lot of shout outs on Instagram because I was always excited to watch your fights.
Yeah, so I remember I DM'd because I saw all the shout outs, but sometimes I get to my Instagram a little bit late, so it's usually through your story, and so the stories are gone. I was like, man, I want to reach out and see what this guy's been talking about. Yeah, so that's what inspired me to reach back to you. I was like, because I don't always go through as far as Instagram, you can find out what's going on, but I don't interact that much through social media. I'm trying to get better about that as far as for, talking to people who message me. If you're interested in talking to me about something, the best way is send me through the contact form at herbdeanmma, at herbdean.com. I looked on your social media, so when we started talking, and I saw some of the things like things that interested me, like you have your 10 commandments and 3 questions. I haven't got a chance to get into your stuff to learn about it, but what are some of those commandments?
The 10 Commandments of Wealth is a program that's is a more introductory level program that is very comprehensive, but it's about the 10 things you must learn, 10 things you must do if you want to create any significant wealth in your life. And it's a program that's about specific business functions on one hand, but also there's a lot of interviews that I did with champions, that some from your sport and some from other sports that were Super Bowl winners or Olympic athletes of various type, gold medal winners. And what I wanted them to share, what I asked them to talk about is like, what are the the gritty things behind the scenes that have to happen? Or a common question that I would ask a champion athlete is, what are some of the things that you had to say no to so you could say yes to the things that you wanted most? Or other people call those sacrifices. I like to think of them as investments, So what are some of the investments a person has to make in themselves that maybe you're not doing what's most emotionally pleasing in the short term, but you're making investments in your future that you're going to have a lot more prosperity and a lot more financial, social, and intellectual abundance through the rest of your life. So the reason I created that course, 10 Commandments of Wealth, on that is, there's the 10 Commandments that are like learning modules that are, some of them are kind of in-depth, nerdy, academic type learning modules. And obviously there's 10 of those, the 10 things you must learn about to create wealth. But then, additionally I invited 20 of my clients on there to tell some of their stories of where they came from and how their journeys turned out, and how obviously many of them, they wanted to work with me for a reason, and they talk about the results that they got in the aftermath of that, the things that they learned, and there's a range. I didn't pick the top 20 clients that made the most money necessarily, but I picked people with different stories. I picked people that some of them still have a job and they learned some entrepreneurial things from me that helped them get maybe a 40% raise over a couple of years in their job. Some of them said they made a couple $1 million in a year, or their net worth is now $8 million, which is triple what it used to be. So there's a variety of stories of people that made a lot of money versus people that didn't make a lot of money yet, but it's clear that they're on their way to a much better trajectory in life.
Right.
That program, it's a digital course. It's not, I don't have to teach it personally. I spent a lot of time creating it, but I don't have to teach it personally. So that allowed me to have a lower price point program that could help someone's life and help them get to know me a bit to see if it makes sense for them to be in one of my personal mentoring courses.
Right.
And I teach 3 of those. So I have one about entrepreneurship, one about real estate, and one about global markets. And those are 10 or 12 weeks long, depending on which one. And they're very in-depth, and they're not for everybody. It's, you're going to work 20, 25 hours a week. I tell the clients as part of the marketing, because it's true, and I want it to be consistent. I want their experience to be consistent with what I told them in the marketing. And I says, it's for somebody that's already doing well, and they want to do a lot better in life. And they probably already have an above average income, but they know they're not living up to their full financial potential. They know they could do a lot better if they had the right information. They'd like to make better decisions. They'd like to focus on the key metrics that would help them do that. So I tell them that, when you go through that course, you're going to work sufficiently hard that you're going to curse me, and you're going to curse yourself. You're going to say, why the hell did I do this? And then, about 2/3 of the way through, they're probably going to thank me, and they're going to thank themselves. And that's the most important outcome, is whatever they think about me, if I did a good job. I bet this is an analog in your life, If somebody might have some sort of opinion or emotion in the short term, but if they look back fairly later, a client of mine is going to say, man, I learned a lot, and that changed my life. And, that guy's a little grumpy and a little rough, but I learned a lot, and it's going to be, it was good. And I'm sure there's people in your life, they might have a short-term opinion different from their long-term opinion.
People have different opinions constantly. So, I know what my goals are. I know what I'm here to do. I know what my passion is. I know what, like I talked to you about a sacred trust. That's a reality to me. And that's a real thing for me. So, I have people. I'm not saying that I don't take feedback and whatnot, but at this thing, I can't base everything on what everyone thinks of me. But I do have people who understand my job and my position, and who I get help from and things like that, or who I bounce things off of. How many people stay the course?
75-80% of them that start will finish. Mm-hmm. But I encourage people to not come if they're not dedicated. I can't be more dedicated to somebody's success than they are. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't want success for them better than or more than they do. And when somebody comes to me and says, Derek, I want to be a multimillionaire. You notice that's a very different thing than to say, Derek, I want you to make me a multimillionaire. Mm-hmm. So that's when I hear something, Derek, I want you to make me. It's Herb, I want you to make me a UFC champion. Right. You see what a stupid thing that is to say? It is. So when I hear that, I'm like, that's probably not the right person. Mm-hmm. When I hear that other question or that other statement, Derek, I want to become a multimillionaire. I'd like your help with that. Well, that's different. Mm-hmm. So, I try to discourage anybody that, if they're not going to do the work, I'd rather they weren't there, because it's really a distraction from people. Imagine in an MMA gym, man. Imagine in jiu-jitsu, that I don't really want somebody graduating from my course and saying they took my course, and they don't, and they sound like a dumbass when they talk about something,
And they don't succeed. Yeah.
So that's not really what I'm looking for.
Same thing here with my course. I want people who come through who have an understanding and a passion for the sport, and not just for the other parts, the interesting part. So that's the funny thing about my job, is that that's my part of the job, is that, our sport's interesting. And I think somebody wrote something about this, about being interesting and being interested. My job is to be interested. And what's really funny is who kind of, hit me up about that is there's a show I used to work with a lot, and the promoter had his father there doing one job, and his father was a really fun guy. He was a real bright guy, real fun guy, but he wasn't the guy who I would be expecting lectures on professionalism from. I'd go to him if I wanted to find out, what's the best bar, or wherever, He's going to show me how to have a good time. And one day, I've probably been traveling all the time, and he's telling me, he goes, man, you don't have that, that same interest you usually have, and probably because each different time as our sport grows or as more opportunities come, different times shift this, focus shifts, or, maybe I'm tired because I might have just come from the other side of the world, and now I'm at a show that's like kind of a regional show that people started at a small Indian reservation. And you think, you kind of start in the matches like this instead of the way you used to. And I was like, I was just kind of listening, like, he's older than me, I respect him, but I wasn't really taking it in. And then he told me, he says, your job, people find you interesting, and people will want to come and take pictures with you. I'm watching you, and, you're getting distracted with that. And your job is to be interested. But it's hard to be interested when people find you interesting. And so, that really set on me and really, really fired in on me. And that is my job. My job is supposed to always be interested. I show up, I know what's going on, I know who's who and what's happening and what they're doing. And so, that's always stuck with me, and that's something that kind of drives me all the time. Somebody told me, I told that story to one of my friends, and he told me that it was somebody wrote a book saying that. You probably know who it is. I don't know who it was who wrote the book saying that, but that's something that helped me out a lot.
I get the philosophy. I'm not familiar with that book, but I get the philosophy that you're conveying there. And I think that it makes a lot of sense that the commonality, you don't want the wrong person to be your client or go through your course and then do some, and then use your name.
Yeah.
And then say some, do some crazy shit with your name, or the Hoist Gracie family. He made that comment about his father and the way that he thinks about that. So
I want people who are interested in the process and not just interested in the result that's going to make them interesting. That's what I want. Yeah.
I thought you may have similar or different take, but I thought about this business as more of a lifestyle business. That it's not a business that I literally am the face of the business. And it's not a business that I'm going to sell to a private equity firm for $1 billion someday or take a publicly traded company or something. But it's a business that puts a few $1 million a year in my pocket after expenses, and that's nice. I make more money from my investments. If I could sit around in my underwear on my couch and do anything and make more money from stock investments than I'll make from that. But the very unique part that I'm very grateful for and I don't lose sight of is I get to meet some very interesting people that kind of are, different renditions of me in the past or different renditions of, an alternative Herb Dean that people that they're taking their life seriously. They want to do really good at something, that they have, an honor or integrity in the way that they want to live their life. They want to make the best of life and they want to have the right resources available to do that. And I like having those people around. And if a client didn't want to make at least $1 million, probably they should do something else. Right. But if I had a client that, if they wanted to do, make a few $1 million and have a lot of fun and have a comfortable life, or if they wanted to make a lot of money, that's kind of the range of people that I could help them. And I guess the last comment I'll make about that, and I'll wrap up about sharing a bit more from you is. When somebody takes one of those courses, when they do go through it, over 70% of the ones that finish the course, over 70% take the second course. Okay. So that tells you something about client satisfaction.
Yeah.
If they take those 2 courses, about 90% take the 3rd course.
Okay.
So that tells you something about retention or client satisfaction. So they're dense, they're hard work, but for the people that have that calling to do better, it helps them a lot, and they say very nice things about me. Okay. And then a lot of them graduate into this mastermind program that. Is to keep them around the other, the people that have gone through 3 courses, that they want to have that social group of other people that are like them. And
that's awesome, right there. Yeah.
There's men, there's women, there's people from different ages all around the world. But I'd say that's the commonality, that they're serious about having an abundant financial future, and and they know this is invite only. They can't fill out anything. It's like somebody that I've taken a personal interest in, that I've asked them. Would you like to be part of this group? And they get to say yes or no one time. They don't get to say, I'll think about it. If they say, I think about it, it's no problem. I made a mistake. But, you won't be invited a second time, So there's a high level of integrity there. The people that are there are very respectful of each other and try to help each other, and they don't want to mess that up, It's not a place for them to come. It's not a dating service where they get to come hit on each other, try to sell something to somebody. It's it is a social group where people try to help each other, and you get it,
Yeah.
So it'd be negligent for me to have the honor to sit with Herb Dean and not ask that. You're in some pretty heated situations on occasion where the UFC and the individuals involved spend a lot of time hyping up a fight. The fighters, there's a lot of tension sometimes, and I see you come in the ring and you do your thing.
Yeah.
And you got to be the calm person amongst, 20,000 people or more cheering for one side or another. The fighters are growling at each other, or the little things that are said that I'm sure you heard some hilarious ones over time.
Oh, yeah, I've heard some good ones.
And then somebody, no doubt, is yelling in from the audience, too, because I've been at the fights enough to hear they're telling you how to do your job while you're in there. Stand them up, Herb. Herb, they got a family.
Exactly.
All the things they yell to you. I've yelled myself. I've at least a couple of times, just randomly for no specific reason. I'd be like, good job, Herb.
Oh, man, I love that.
So that's usually after about three drinks. Then it's like, good job, Herb. And so it's just my way of a humorous contribution to the environment. But with all that chaos going on around you, what have you found is like you look very calm there most of the time. I'm sure you have some excited moments, but you look like you have a peace about you or a calmness about you in the mix of all that noise and chaos that a lot of people wouldn't be able to control their senses so much. But what would you share about that?
Oh, well, for one, reps. And like we said, also thinking about the situations and going over them. Also knowing that every time before I get there, that's the one thing that makes me calm, is realizing that I'm probably going to see something I haven't seen before, some variation I haven't seen, and I'm going to need to make a decision about it in a split second. So the job is to be calm and realize that, I'm pretty good from stripping the sensationalism away from something and knowing what my job is and always relying on that, And so, so a lot of ways I'm not as wrapped up in the sensationalism. I'm not as wrapped up in moments of fandom. I'm not, all those things are not for me. So sometimes, when I've done interviews with people, I can be a boring interview because people are going to ask me who my favorite fighter is. What's your this? What's your that? And maybe it's because of my personality. I didn't really have a favorite color as a kid or anything like that, where some people just say theirs right away. I don't. But I'm here to try to be, calm and focused and try to be as consistent, even though it's impossible, but try to be as a consistent piece of the environment as the cage that they're fighting in. And that's what my job is there to provide. I'm there. I kind of one time likened it to like being a bass player in a band. I'm there to provide a consistent environment for people to showcase. And so I'm not going to be able to do that and get caught up in the sensationalism of what's going on, So.
You are the professional in your sport, and it's an honor for me to spend some time with you. I appreciate you taking the time to share some of your knowledge and wisdom, and you have plenty of opportunities to do a lot of things in life. So I appreciate that you chose to spend a couple hours sharing some of your, your knowledge and wisdom and life stories with us.
Well, thank you. It was an honor that you reached out to me and asked me to be on your show, and it's an honor that you, the things that you accomplish and the things that you are, and also I feel like I'm in a very good group, having been invited here to be interviewed by you.
Thank you very much for coming, Herb. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I was living on my coach's living room on a mattress. I ended up just bouncing at a bar. I'd been a cop. I quit my job. And
Derek Moneyberg presents 10 Commandments of Wealth.
Took the gamble on myself to become a successful professional fighter and make it to the UFC or Pride. And at the time,
am I making a sacrifice right now, or am I just investing in a better future? So it's easier for me to make those decisions when I think about it. Is like, oh,
yeah, absolutely. And now that you mention it, having to actually really process and think about it, I think that word sacrifice is kind of like, I believe it's the word that the ones at the top kind of use to make everyone else feel better about it. Because when you're at the top, now you realize that was an investment.
Was everything just golden and easy and handed to you, or do you have a little struggle yourself along the way?
No. Yeah, in 2013 and 2015, I was living out of my car, full time, and I was too proud to ask for help. Like, how ridiculous is that? You're living out of your car and you think you know it all. And 2015, that's when I kind of I knew that I didn't know it all. So why not find experts in that and really shortcut that? I thought I was going to just chip away. I thought I was just going to read books till I was an expert. I never really talked to anyone that actually did it.
It's been about a week since I've joined the 10 Commandments of Wealth program, and there's so many interviews that are offered in this program.
I'm inside the Derek Moneyberg 10 Commandments of Wealth program. This is an awesome program that you're gonna love. I'm gonna use the principles and the knowledge from this program to help me boost my leads in my marketing firm. Buy this program, it's a wonderful investment for your future. You won't regret it and you'll absolutely love it.